We can wait for that exact moment of comparison. There's a tricky couple.
Check, check. Oh, that is much better. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Good Shabbos. So tonight is a special Shabbat. You may or may not know that. It has a very special name. Shabbat tonight is called Shabbat HaGadol. Anybody know what that means, Gadol? The big Shabbat. Okay, and there's a few different reasons given as to why this Shabbat is called Shabbat HaGadol, the big Shabbat. One that is perhaps the most obvious is that it's the Shabbat immediately preceding Pesach, which is one of our most important holidays, one of our most important moments in our story, in our history, the moment of course, redemption from Egypt. Another reason given is that this was, and I promise this won't be the case, this was traditionally one of the nights that rabbis gave one of the longest sermons of the year. It was not the high holidays traditionally, it was Shabbat Shuvah and Shabbat HaGadol. So tonight, Shabbat HaGadol is this warm-up period, and there's even a thread in the tradition that says the anticipation of the redemption that we talk about and we sing about and we pray for at Pesach begins at Shabbat HaGadol. So in that spirit, tonight, we've selected some songs that are about our ability to bring about freedom and redemption for others. And we will be starting with a Pete Seeger favorite, If I Had a Hammer. So I hope you'll sing with us.
That's right. Please join. If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, I'd hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out warning, I'd hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. Ooh, you know the same version. Yeah, the bell, I'd ring it in the morning, I'd ring it in the evening, all over this land. I'd bring out danger, I'd bring out warning, I'd bring out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. Ooh, if I had a song, I'd sing it in the morning, I'd sing it in the evening, all over this land. I'd sing out danger, I'd sing out warning, I'd sing out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. Ooh. Now I've got a hammer, and I've got a bell, now I got a song to sing all over this land. It's the hammer of justice, it's the bell of freedom, it's the song about love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. Ooh. Let's take a nice deep Shabbat breath in and out. Feeling perhaps the greatness of this Shabbat, the greatness of our ability every single day to bring about justice and freedom and love between our brothers and our sisters. We're now going to add some light to our Shabbat by turning to page 120 for the lighting and blessing of our Shabbat candles. And it's a pleasure to invite up the Berzins, Jeff and Karen and Katie, to help us with the blessing.
And let's turn together to page 138 for Lecha Dodi, the next part of our service that helps us bring in a little more of Shabbat and let a little more of that deep breath in. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Shamor v'zachor v'dibor echad, ish mi'Yamanuel ha'miuchad, Adonai echad, v'shemo echad, l'shelo tiferet v'litila, lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Likrat Shabbat lechu b'nechad, ki mekor habracha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof ma'aseh lemachshavah tchila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Hitoreri, hitoreri, ki ba'orei kumi ori, uri, uri, shir daberi, kevod Adonai alayich nila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Bori shalom ateret vala, gam besimcha u'tzala, tochem unei asegula. Let's remain standing, but take a moment to take a look around, greet the people near you, wish them a Shabbat Shalom.
Came over from London, yes? Good. I'm Beth. Josh.
And now let's remain standing and turn together to page 144 for the Chatzi Kaddish. Amen.
is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim.
Ahava Olam Beit Yisrael Lamcha Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu li'ma'areta Al kein Adonai Eloheinu V'shachmeinu u'kuneinu Nasiach bechukecha V'nismach b'divrei Toratecha u'b'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed. Hi'en chayenu v'yorech yameinu v'yorech yameinu u'bahem nehekei yomam v'layla yomam v'layla v'yavachach asimen v'yolamim v'aruch atah Adonai Evamo Yisrael Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu
Page 154.
ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם לשבתך בביתך ובמלאכתך במלך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים אני אדוני
That last section of the Via Hafta talks about Yetziat Mitzrayim, when we were taken out of Egypt and freed and finally released from bondage. And in a way, it's in conversation with the next prayer, which is on page 156, which is called the Geulah, and it reminds us of that act of redemption, which now, as we approach Pesach, is so much on our minds. And I'll remind you that the creators of the Siddur long, long ago, when they put these prayers in this order, were giving us a very important message. They took a prayer that was the theme of creation, that was Ma'ariv Aravim, right after Baruch Hu.
Then they took a prayer about revelation, the gift of Torah, which is what we just sang, Ahavat Olam. And then as an example of some Torah, we sang the Shema, we sang the V'ahavta, and then they put this next prayer, Geula, a prayer about redemption, about freedom. And who remembers what's odd about that order? It's incorrect according to the chronology of what happens in the Torah. Creation happens first, obviously, right? Then we're freed from Egypt, and then we receive Torah at Mount Sinai. So why do the prayers that have those themes have the second two reversed? Right? We're talking about receiving Torah, and then we're talking about redemption. Any guesses? What's the message? What? Nothing? Okay. Ooh, that's a nice message. Marty, I like that. That studying Torah could be a big key, right? It could be a big piece of the puzzle in how we bring about redemption. What I hear in that as well is Torah reminds us of the values of the ethics that we all hold dear, and that remind us to help, because of our own story of redemption, to help make sure everybody's free. And so that's the reason they're reversed here in the Siddur, is it's actually about a future redemption. It's reminding us that God freed us long ago, but it's saying, the work is not done yet. We all have a responsibility to make sure everyone is free. And then on the shores of the sea, of course, we all sang. And so, to reenact that, to celebrate that singing, please turn to page 646.
And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to the one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced and danced the whole night long. And Miriam was a weaver of unique variety. The tapestry she wove was one which sang our history. With every thread and every strand she crafted her delight. A woman touched with spirit, she dances toward the light. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to the one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women dance and dance the whole night long. As Miriam stood upon the shores and gazed across the sea, the wonder of this miracle she soon came to believe. Whoever thought the sea would part with an outstretched hand, and we would pass to freedom and march to the promised land. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to the one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women dance and dance the whole night long. And Miriam, the prophet, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her just as she had planned. And Miriam raised her voice in song, she sang with praise and might. We've just lived through a miracle, we're going to dance tonight. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to the one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women dance and dance the whole night long.
And now turn back in your prayer book to page 161. Let's read together at the top of the page. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukkah shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim.
Shiva Kodoshim B'chol Yom Yalelucha Sela Baruch Atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh.
We continue silently through page 180, and you may be seated when you have finished your prayers. Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos. Lo yisagoyel b'cherev, lo yimadu od milchama. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, and never again shall we study war. It's a prayer, of course, for the future. And a prayer for Shabbat, when we focus, if you take a look at how much we say the word shalom in our service. You know, if you ever just focus on something on a particular Friday night. We talk about shalom, talk about peace so much. And so I hope you'll join with me in sending out an extra prayer of peace and peacefulness tonight, and really every night. Let's take that feeling of peacefulness, that sense of calm that we have created in this room, and let's send it to our friends and our family members and members of our community who are not feeling for that peacefulness for which we all long. Those who are ill, those who are suffering, in pain, who require an operation, who are trying to heal. So tonight we are especially sending our prayers to Reagan Konecki, John DiNicola, Nancy Schwab, Miriam Swidler, Larry Mancini, Charles Savitt, Debbie Clymer, Burl Bellows, Carrie Bellows, Cindy Rishal, Dovie Benayer, Arthur Myers, Iris Clark, Stacy Reed, Nan Kraszewski, Fred Schaefer, Daphne Rosenberg, Heather Waters, Joyce Giuseppe, Eliyahu Ben-Sara, and Savannah Johnson. Who else are you thinking of tonight and sending prayers of healing to?
Dan Powell and Daryl Mattis.
Lawrence Alexander. Elizabeth Bob Hampshire.
Corey Gannon.
Saul
מי שברך אבותינו אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, ואימותינו שרה רבקה, לאה ורחל, הוא יברך וירפא את כל החולים האלה. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Leah, and Rachel, bless and heal all those who are ill, all who are in pain, all who are suffering. We pray, O God, for a healing of mind and of body and of spirit, and a return to shlemut, a return to peacefulness and to wholeness. Baruch atah Adonai Rafeh HaCholim, we praise you, God, who cares for the sick. And let us say together, Amen. Let's turn to page 371 and join in Misha Berach. We praise you, God, who makes good things happen in the world around us. And let's say together, Amen. So what simchas, what smachot, what happy occasions do you have going on in your lives that you'd like to share? Yes, Doreen.
just got back from being in California for 3 months, and our daughter Judy called with the baby Susanna, and so we were having dinner, and so I said, Shabbat Shalom, Susanna, and her arms go up like this. And because in Sunday school, they do Shabbat, and their arms are the candles. So we say Shabbat meals, and she can't talk, but her arms are up. And I just thought it was adorable.
Oh, wow. Oh, how sweet. Thank you for sharing that. Please, okay, I can always repeat for the crowd.
My daughter's son won 2 marathons, Boston Marathon and Marine Corps Marathon.
Wow. So your daughter signed up for 2 marathons, the Boston Marathon and the Marine Corps Marathon.
2 weeks ago, as a tune-up, she ran 2 50K races, one on Saturday and one on Sunday.
As tune-ups,
Yeah.
she ran 50K on Saturday and Sunday.
Oh,
Two.
She's a graduate of our university.
Well, hey, we can take all the credit for it. Well, please wish her a good luck, a safe run, and I hope it's fulfilling for her. That's wonderful. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. What else is going on? Yes. Go ahead.
My son turned 50.
You're gonna let some math to your son, your little boy. Turn 50.
Moshe Israeli Yitzchak, 40.
All right.
And the Orthodox rabbi who was at his piano bed
Yeah.
said his initials were Dani,
Hmm.
which meant he would be a leader of men, a general. And I said, why don't we all?
In other leadership positions, perhaps.
Somewhere.
Wow. Well, happy birthday to your son. That's terrific. My son also had a birthday. Spencer turned 3, a whopping 3 years old. Of course, had Thomas the Tank Engine themed party. Yeah, he's good, so that's great. Happy birthday, Thomas. 3 years since my mom's anniversary. That's true. That's true. Thank you for mentioning that. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Yeah, Beth.
My college roommate goes back way back. Her son-in-law just received a new kidney yesterday
Oh, wow.
from a living donor, somebody they didn't know. One of those donor
Matches.
matches on there. Yeah.
What a mitzvah that is.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I hope they both heal and are well.
Keeping up on Facebook, and I guess he went through the surgery just fine.
We'll be thinking about sending healing, healing to both of them. Anybody else? Well, this was a big week for other reasons, which you may or may not be aware of, in that we had a major election in Israel. And I want to talk about that a little bit tonight. As you may know, Benjamin Netanyahu, known as Bibi Netanyahu, was eventually elected for an unprecedented 5th term as prime minister. He had one that ended back in 1999, and now this will be his 4th consecutive term as prime minister. And now he is faced with the challenge of forming a coalition government, because as you know, the Knesset is a what's the word, parliamentary government, right? Where they have to form alliances and coalitions with a number of little parties in order to be the party in charge. As you also may know, Netanyahu won by a very, very slim margin against his challenger, Benny Gantz. And it was so close that there were even announcements of Gantz's victory before the final total had come in. So what are we to think about what happened in Israel? A, do we care? B, should we care? And C, if we care, what do we do? What is our responsibility based on what seems to be happening in Israel? I wanted to share with you some thoughts from some of my very wise colleagues and friends, one of whom, Rabbi Josh Weinberg, just changed positions. He had been the executive director of ARTSA, which is the Reform Movement's Zionist organization, and he's now been moved into a vice president position, I think vice president of Israel engagement in the URJ for the Union of Reform Judaism. So instead of ARTSA being a separate organization within the Reform world, it's now integrated fully into the Reform movement and is a branch of it. And I grew up with him at camp. So he makes a very interesting point. He says, in general, it's a good idea to hold Israeli elections just before Shabbat HaGadol, which of course, as we've learned already, tonight is Shabbat HaGadol. Because however you feel after hearing the results, it's comforting to then go to synagogue and listen to what was once deemed the longest sermon of the year. And some say that the redemption that we celebrate on Pesach begins already on Shabbat HaGadol. And then he writes, there, feel better? Combined with this week's Parsha of Mitzorah, anybody remember what takes place in Parsha of Mitzorah? I know David knows. I know Kendra Belinda knows. Anybody else? No? Okay, so last week's portion, Tazria, this week's portion, Mitzorah, are portions that deal with icky, gross things that Bar Mitzvah students dread. Things like pus, blood, menstruation, seminal emissions, mold, leprosy, some kind of skin affliction, and what the community does about all of those things, right? So they're pretty gross to read. And so Rabbi Weinberg writes, combined with this week's Parsha of Mitzorah, which deals with skin diseases and various afflictions of the sort, rabbis and scholars have often struggled to connect with the relevant messages for contemporary times. Boy, do we ever. It is that challenging connection that many diaspora Jews may be feeling after the elections. The first thing that diaspora Jews should internalize is that Israelis went to free and fair elections and elected the party and its leader that spoke to them. Yes, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was elected to a 4th consecutive term and 5th overall, based on a campaign in which he openly courted the extremist and racist right wing, iterated the notion that Israel is not actually a state for all of its citizens, and has dangled the dangerous notion of West Bank annexation out there for the public to digest. So let's just take that in for a second. Israel, we have always celebrated as a democracy in the Middle East, as a country that is welcoming to any and all, and as a country that we presume is moving towards a two-state solution. With Bibi Netanyahu's re-election, that becomes almost an impossibility, if not a very far away possibility. He did so through potential indictment charges on 3 cases of corruption, plus a submarine scandal for fun, and nevertheless was elected. Like the sages who explained that Mitzorah is an acronym of the words Motzi Shem Ra, one who finds slanderous speech, Netanyahu went to great lengths to paint Benny Gantz of Kahol Lavan, that's the party he was running under, blue and white, as a leftist traitor and managed to outright the right wing. This led to a shrinking of smaller parties, with even the new right party of ministers Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked finding themselves just shy of a seat, and after 6 years in positions of power, they are out. So there's huge shifts happening. And remember that because it's a coalition government, Netanyahu now has to be thinking about who is he going to build these alliances with, what are the parties. And there are Arab Israeli parties in the Knesset. So my colleague, Rabbi Jeff Salkin, processes some of this information and highlights some of the differences in how American Jews view what happened in Israel and how Israeli Jews view the election this past week. And he points out that the 2018 American Jewish Committee Survey of American Jews shows a growing divide between American Judaism and Israeli Judaism. So first, 80% of American Jews favor Israel granting non-Orthodox rabbis the power to perform life cycle events and conversions. 80% think any rabbi who's not, so as of right now, only Orthodox rabbis in Israel can perform life cycle events for them to be legally recognized. But only 49% of Israelis believe that. 81% of American Jews favor civil marriage and divorce in Israel. So not just religious marriage, but to allow for civil marriage. 81% of American Jews. 55% of Israelis favor that. 73% of American Jews favor a mixed prayer area adjacent to the Western Wall, right? We just had Women of the Wall Shabbat a few weeks ago. It's something we really are passionate about. So 73%, 42% of Israelis would favor that. A number that includes Benny Gantz, who said at the AIPAC policy conference that the Western Wall is long enough to accommodate everyone. 57% of American Jews disapprove either strongly or somewhat of how the current American administration is handling U.S.-Israel relations. So 57% disapprove of what's happening right now between America and Israel. 77% of Israelis approve. 59% of American Jews favor the establishment of a demilitarized Palestinian state in the current situation, and the same percentage, 59%, think that all or some of the West Bank settlements should be dismantled as part of the peace agreement. In contrast, the figures for Israelis are 43% and 39%, respectively. So then Rabbi Salkin imagines that there's people in Haifa who are shouting at us, so if you don't like it, leave Florida and come to Israel, bring your entire community, come here to live, and then you can vote. Well, the trouble is, we say that we're one people. We believe we're one people. So how can we discredit one voice or the other? So Rabbi Salkin writes, I say the same thing to American Jews. You realize, don't you, that half of the world Jewry lives in Israel? That we must move Israel and Jewish peoplehood to the center of our self-definition of Jews. Israel should be at the center of our self-definition, because it gets even sadder, as he continues with more research. 31% of American Jews and 22% of Israelis responded about the other. They are not a part of my family. Only 28% of Israelis consider American Jews their siblings, and only 12% of American Jews view Israeli Jews as their siblings. 12% view Israeli Jews as our brothers and our sisters. So it's bad. What do we do with this? What do we do with the fact that Israel seems to be moving in a direction that many, many American Jews disagree with passionately, that don't seem to reflect the values that we hold in our Judaism? Do we imagine that if Gantz had won, that perhaps all of a sudden within a few years, Israel would be overflowing with Reform and conservative Jews, the rabbis would be everywhere, and there'd be, women praying at the wall? I don't know about that. But we've all changed, and we have to figure out what that change is going to mean. We can't assume we believe we are the same people. We can't believe that we are, and we view each other as brothers and sisters. So I hope you will consider, if you feel strongly that what Bibi Netanyahu has promised is not in line with your view, if you support it, wonderful, that's great, and it's okay for us to disagree. But if perhaps it's not the view that you feel of Israel, and the view that I believe when we sing at our Passover Seders, B'Shana Ha'Ba'ah B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem, that we're imagining, and that it's not the image of Israel that perhaps we picture when our people left Egypt for freedom and walked 40 years to this incredible promised land of Israel. If we don't feel that Israel is living up to all of that promise and all of that responsibility, then there are organizations we can support that will continue to fight for values that many of us hold dear. So I would suggest the Israel Movement for Progressive Judaism, which represents Reform and conservative congregations in Israel. The Israel Religious Action Center, unfortunately called IRAC, which is the advocacy arm of the Reform movement, the leading civil and human rights organization that is constantly bringing lawsuits before the government, fighting for women not having to sit at the back of the bus, or Palestinians not being treated so differently from Israelis in the culture. Chidush, which is an organization that works for religious freedom and equality in Israel. Women of the Wall, which we know, which is fighting for the rights of women to pray in equality and enjoy out loud at the Western Wall. And the Shalom Hartman Institute, a Jerusalem-based study center that strengthens Jewish peoplehood identity and pluralism and ensures that Judaism is a compelling force for good in the 21st century. And I have one more suggestion. You may know that there is every few years a World Zionist Congress that we have an opportunity to vote for. We vote for a slate. All Jews are eligible to vote. And the next vote is coming up January 21st through March 11th, 2020. So we've got a little while. But we can start thinking about it, because it's the only opportunity for diaspora Jews to democratically influence Israeli society through our voice in Israel's national institutions. We earn a number of seats in the World Zionist Congress that help determine how various funds are allocated within Israeli society. So, with all of this in mind, we always pray for peace in Israel and peace in Jerusalem. Our vision of peace may sometimes feel farther away. We pray for it nonetheless. We remember the role that we all can play, even over here in America, as American Jews. And I pray that as we are sitting at our Passover tables, re-envisioning that Exodus, that we all continue to work towards that promised land that Israel can be. Ki Yeh Ratzon, may it be God's will. Amen. A few announcements. We are on spring break in Kivun, so there's no Kivun on Sunday or on Wednesday. And please note that there is no Friday night service next Friday night because it is the first night of Pesach, the first Seder. If you don't have a place to go, if you haven't yet found your seat at a Passover table, please let us know. We'll make sure to match you up. We want to make sure everybody has a place to go. And please remember that second night of Passover, we have our big community Seder here at CBSRZ. RSVPs are required, and we ask that they come in ASAP because it's 1 week away, and we need to know the numbers of who will be coming. So you can contact the main office or register online for our second night. That's Saturday, April 20th at 6 p.m., our second night Passover Community Seder. Tomorrow, I encourage you all to consider coming back. It's wonderful you're here tonight, but hey, come back tomorrow morning too. For our second Saturday Shabbat morning service, a special musical Shabbat that we've planned celebrating our choir. And they will be participating in various parts of the service as well as sharing some of their own personal reflections of some of their favorite pieces of music that they share with us. So it's really going to be a wonderful musical service followed by a light lunch that they are helping to sponsor. Next Tuesday, April 16th at 10 a.m. is my next coffee hour with Rabbi Bellows over at Simon's. You are all always invited. It's open, it's informal, you don't have to sign up or anything, just come and sit, have some coffee. This morning we actually had a wonderful shared coffee hour with Reverend Froggett, and we were so well represented, we were actually the only representatives. It was all CBSRZ people who came, and we just had a nice hour or so of chatting and being together. So Tuesday at 10 a.m. is the next one. Thank you to Jeff and Karen Berzin for sponsoring the ONEG this week in memory of Jeff's father, Philip Berzin. And finally, you may have seen the email that went out to all CBSRZ members saying please come in and get a code for our new security system. It really is important that everyone come and get a code. It's a critical part of how we're trying to keep us all safe and also ensure that people are able to still feel that this is a welcoming place. We'll continue having the doors open for certain times when there's major events, as we, a little before the event and a little into the event. But for all the other activities that so many of you are involved in, we really do need everybody to come in and get a code and talk to Wendy about that. So please do put that on your list. Any other announcements? Anything I'd like to add? Any thoughts you have about the Israeli elections? I mean, I'd love to hear it, and feel free to disagree with me. It's really okay. We're Jews, we disagree. That's what we do both. Yeah, what do you think, Nancy?
Personally, I feel a kinship with all Jews around the world. So that's the brother and sister.
Yeah.
However, they are an independent country. And I want to know what business is it of ours to tell them how to run their country? The Jewish part, the religious part, I get, but do we want somebody telling us how to run our country? So I'm trying to separate the political from the religious.
Okay, so in case you didn't hear what Maxine said, she said, on one hand, you feel a sense of kinship, of family with Jews all over the world. But you're wondering, which is a very common thought and a very common complaint in Israel, of what right do we have to weigh in, or how did you put it? Even try to influence, tell them how to run their country.
Right. You wouldn't want them telling us how to run out.
So they do.
Yes.
We just wouldn't want it. But yeah.
We do or we don't.
But
It's my opinion that we should.
let them.
They're a sovereign nation. We're not telling England or France and we don't want them telling us.
Yeah.
So political as opposed to religious.
So separating the religious connection from the political national
Right.
relationship. Great point.
Then I have another thing.
Okay, Maxine has more to say.
The West Bank.
Yeah.
Our borders have changed since biblical times, many times. The land that God gave us has changed many, many times. And I have gone through that gate to get into the West Bank. Are we looking for trouble? Are we looking for a war? Is that what Netanyahu was looking for? To annex this? And then what about the Gaza Strip? I mean, there are so many things to be considered. I don't know exactly what this done, but he's,
He was more centrist.
okay.
He wasn't really left at all. He was pretty centrist.
And I have Christian friends that are intelligent and read papers and see what's going on. And they're anti-Netanyahu. Okay? So
Maxine is wondering, given the fact that we don't want to interfere in their elections, we still wonder, what is Netanyahu, what is his end game, right? What's his goal? Is he trying to start a war with the West Bank or with the Gaza Strip in annexing or...
people living over there.
Yeah.
You've been there.
I live there, yeah.
Right.
So what's next, right? Okay, good question. Anyone else want to weigh in? Something you're thinking about? Okay, hang on. Give the rest of the class a chance.
Well, it's been interesting what happened since he was indicted. And he's smart. His problem is when he forms his government, he's going to get those parties that will back him. But he may not finish, which would be interesting.
It's been a question of can they even bring charges against him when he's a sitting prime minister?
Just like the one we have now.
Right. And so there are these 3 major charges of corruption and bribery. So what Alan said is, what will happen, how, will that be part of his strategy and how he builds his government is working with groups who maybe would downplay or ignore, and I couldn't word you on where I covered, the corruption charges. Any other thoughts? It's really complicated. If nothing else, I feel like this has only made things more complicated. When we as American Jews are trying to, if we are trying to defend Israel against people who are rightfully saying that Palestinians are not always treated so well, this makes it even harder for us. Maybe that is irrelevant, but it still is hard for us to watch it taking place. So, any other? If you have, oh yeah, Stephen, please. Yeah, I welcome your perspective.
Separate from whether Israel is its own country or whether it's a religious country, the bigger thing that's come out this week that seems to have been missed a lot is the Grand Mufti saying that Solomon, David, and Jesus Christ never walked Jerusalem. That, I think, has
Yeah, I didn't even know that.
he said, I think it was Monday afternoon.
Oh, wow.
That to me is a bigger threat to peace in the Middle East does give peace. That's what he said.
So interesting. So the claims to the historical ties to the country, that's still a factor here. What do we believe? And at the same time, there was just new archaeological evidence found that backs up how long.
Right, and that's what I think that goes back to Maxine's point about the West Bank and Gaza.
Yeah, it is.
That if you relinquish one little piece, you could be opening up the door to other countries. And let's face it, they're a spearhead against Iran.
So, you're helping us remember how complicated this all is, and how there are other forces at play outside of Israel and the Palestinian territories. Right? Thank you. Maxine, you have one more
Israelis
comment.
gave up those parts as part of the peace agreement. This time. Other times it was given away for other reasons. When I was there in 96, 97 sometime, Lebanon, we had the border between Lebanon and Israel. And the hotel I was staying in, the people from the kibbutzim on the border were living in the lobby of this hotel because it wasn't safe to be at the kibbutz. And I'm saying it's a no man's land between. Why are we shooting back and forth? Why are the Israelis? And I said we because I felt part of that.
Sure.
Okay. Are we looking for trouble? It was an established no man's land. So stay on your side and you stay on your side. But there was shooting back and forth. And these poor people had no home at that point.
So, when do we fight back? When do we let something go?
When do we initiate?
When do we initiate? I encourage you, if you're feeling confused about it, which I think so many of us are, feeling like there's just so many different variables and factors at play, to continue reading up about it. Read a lot of different sources, read multiple Israeli sources. There have been accusations, one of the corruption accusations against Netanyahu is that he was paying off certain media outlets in Israel to report on him only positively. So read multiple sources. And read different, very well-versed American thinkers about Israel. Our definition of Zionism may differ, but I think it's still okay to be a Zionist, to care about the existence of the state of Israel. I happen to think we do have the right to be lovingly critical of what happens there because of your family. But we also have so much to learn that we don't understand about what it is to be Israeli. So, thank you for your thought. David, did you have a hand? No? Okay, just maybe stretched. So thank you for a few additional thoughts. That was really quite helpful. Let's turn to our concluding prayers with Aleinu on page 586 in the middle of the page. Please rise.
Adonai hu Elohim, Bashan
595. It is hard to sing of oneness when our world is not complete, when those who once brought wholeness to our life have gone, and naught but memory can fill the emptiness their passing leaves behind. But memory can tell us only what we were, in company with those we loved. It cannot help us find what each of us alone must now become. Yet no one is really alone. Those who live no more echo still within our thoughts and words, and what they did is part of what we have become. We do best homage to our dead when we live our lives more fully, even in the shadow of our loss. For each of our lives is worth the life of the whole world. In each one is the breath of the ultimate one. In affirming the one, we affirm the worth of each one, whose life now ended brought us closer to the source of life, in whose unity no one is alone, and every life finds purpose. Page 598. If you hear the name of a family member or friend on our Yortzeit list tonight, and if you're comfortable doing so, I invite you to rise when you hear his or her name. This allows us to recognize your loss and offer you comfort. And then we will all rise to join you for the recitation of the Mourner's Kaddish. This Shabbat we mark the Yortzeits, the anniversaries of death for Ida Barron, Nathan Barron, Nachum Ben, Joseph Baum, Howard Bruno, Jenny Cohen, Rose Crayer, Dora Elkin, Harry Frank, Doris Davidson Goldberg, Benjamin Goldstein, David Callett, Joseph Nakowitz, Yetta Rothenstein, David Timothy Sandberg, Marilyn Savitt, Arthur Scher, Arnold Scher, Esther Starkman, Aryeh Stein Azen, Eric Stockton, Rose Weinstein, and Dora Zarchin, Zichronan Livracha. Who else is marking a Shiva, Shloshim, or Yortzeit and would like to share a name out loud? May all of the memories of our loved ones always be a precious blessing to those who know and love them. Together now we rise, and we join in the words of Kaddish Yatom, the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, v'alma tirach tirutei v'yamlich machutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei t'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah v'varach le'olam u'amei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei t'kudisha b'richu. Le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran v'yalma v'imru amen. Yehei Shlam Rabbah min Shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh Shalom B'Ramav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael, B'Imru, Amen. Oseh Shalom B'Ramav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael,
Please be seated for our closing song this evening as we give a nod to Pesach coming so soon. We will close with Dayenu, and I did find it in the Siddur. So that sounds fun. Okay, that's what I was looking for before.
But I'll let you all know the words.
I think, and at least you know Dayenu, right?
Yeah.
All right. Ilu Hotzi Hotzianu Hotzianu Mi Mitzrayim Hotzianu Mi Mitzrayim Dayenu 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 Dayenu
Pesach coming up, a sweet Pesach, and Shabbat Shalom.